All right, peace, everybody. It's Brother Derek here, CEO of the Black Man Starter Kit and author of Choose Wisely. I got my man Craig Carson here. He's going to give you a lot of information about what he does, the importance of, having a lawyer. And we're just going to talk about all the stuff that this brother's doing. He's doing a lot of stuff for the community. He's based in Rochester, New York, and I know he's making moves, I believe, in Buffalo. He'll give you guys more information about that. But how you doing, bro?
I'm cooling, chilling. Peace to you. Good evening to all the good people out there.
All right. So Craig Carson, man, I really appreciate what you're doing, but tell everybody what you are, like, as far as your practice, what you focus on. I want you to really get everything rolling, so let the people know.
Yeah, so I'm basically a general law practitioner. So the areas that I focus on the most is family law generally, but then divorce, custody, child support, orders of protection, and separately, I deal in evictions, both for the landlord or the tenant. But then also, in addition or separately from that, unemployment insurance law, as well as traffic infractions. Occasionally I'll do like small things like contract review, um, human rights cases, these kind of things. But that mostly family law in little areas of civil, as I described.
All right, man. I see you get it in, and I appreciate that. I think it's really important that you just being an attorney and a brother of color, because a lot of times you don't see a lot of attorneys as black men. We see some black women, but it's not too many black men attorneys out here. So I personally appreciate you and what you do, and I really want to know what made you get into law, because that's not really something that, at least for me, I don't see too many brothers in the field or sisters. So what made you get into law?
It's a good question, good sir. It's a good question. When I was young, when I was young, basically I was exposed to a lot of things. So I was in Boy Scouts, and I was in the community a lot. My parents were in the community, particularly my mother. And the Boy Scouts brought me to the Law Explorers program, which is strongly recommended, because it's a large program, and it's in most cities, and there's a lot of opportunities that come with it. So that introduced me to, just understand what, the law looks like, how it's practiced, and then activities that come with it. And then I think that kind of led into teen court in Rochester, New York, where you're actually in court. You're actually kind of like taking on real cases where teenagers may have gotten into trouble. And instead of getting, into the system, their peers may, represent them in a case, and then provide community service or whatever. But those experiences kind of is what led me into the law. I think that my motivation for kind of staying in the law and what would get me excited and things I think I was very adamant about was really helping people, again, because I had kind of this public servant kind of background and family that I came from. So being able to give back slash educate folks, and then potentially engage specifically in like civil rights type law was, where I think my heart was at. I haven't really gotten there yet, but I have been able to help a lot of people. So the civil rights law is kind of probably the next maybe 5 years of my career, I'll figure out, how to do that efficiently, because I can't just practice on anyone. So I got to slowly, gradually weave that into my practice. But yeah, my upbringing, big up to my parents, and the elders around me. It provided a source of inspiration for that and some guidance in that path.
All right. So, can you talk about your upbringing a little bit too? Like, your parents, were they in the law, or was it just something that you just kind of just picked up, or trying to get you to just go a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So, I grew up in the 19th Ward, Rochester's West Side, Southwest Side to be exact. Big up everybody over there, and Thurston, of course, Thurston World as I call it. But for those of you that are out there, 1904 pretty much represents, just like any other city, kind of the black side of town. But this side of town is, it's a good mix, similar to like a Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, or South Side, Jamaica, Queens, Northwest and DC, and so on and so forth. These areas where it's like, some black folks that are educated, some black folks that are hood, in a good variety, but a little more black centered, though, a little more culturally in tune. Is the 19th ward, and so, I grew up on kind of the competitive athletic block where a lot of brothers were really striving in some way, a lot of guys that like wanted to really be somebody or do something or prove something. A lot of people on my block were like that. It was like 8 to 10 of us, all people right now that either have like a business or they have decent ownership of things. They're making moves in the community, whatever. My parents, they were Howard grads, well educated. They met at Howard. They got married at Howard. They basically have their master's degrees. They interestingly enough went through a phase in like 70s, 80s where they were in banking. Then they transitioned both of them into education. I know my father dabbled lightly in politics, and some of the movements of the time in the 70s, and things like that. So my upbringing consists of, really, really a lot of active-minded, aware, conscious-minded, inclined people, in kind of places, stuff like that. I was brought up in a church, my Olivet Baptist Church, which, I don't entirely subscribe to that, but I do believe the foundation that it provided for me was dope. So my sense of principles and values is always a part of what I do. I always look for the core principle ideal, that helps me understand things and people and moments and stuff like that. So I'm a very principled person because I would say because of the Christian upbringing. And yeah, that's a pretty good breakdown of like, who I am and, how I understood and understand my purpose. I'm an Aquarius, also, I'm born under my yacht, in under Kemetic spirituality. So of course, with these two things, I'm a very social person, very just and fair person. I constantly consider what it means to seek the truth, what justice means, is much an objective, not a subjective outlook. And I'm always looking to treat people fairly, white, black, whatever. But nonetheless, I am black centered either way. So justice is like really important to me. Like fairness is really important to me. So even if two people are arguing, one of them's my homeboy, I might check him like, nah, I don't know. I rock with you, but you still wrong though. We gotta bring balance to this situation. So I'm still a person of balance, truth, justice, and all of that naturally. I don't just take sides just because some blind sense of loyalty. So these are the kind of things that I as a person am based on, and kind of the way that I got there.
All right, man. I definitely appreciate it. I think that's cool too that you came from the community and now are serving the community and giving back and you're doing so much stuff. We're gonna talk about that, but it's just a cool story and I'm glad you shared that. So could you tell everybody some of the struggles you had becoming, a lawyer and attorney? Like I know you had to go through some stuff, especially being a brother, and I don't want, and you ain't got to go too deep into, everything. But what were some of the struggles that you had, just coming up? Because I know it's not an easy task, so you definitely commended for what you do. But what were some of the struggles for you?
Yeah, I think for me, like my upbringing didn't come with like the harsh poverty, type struggle. My struggle is more like, I guess you could say the path toward finding who I was, and still to this day, of course, that's the struggle. I think when we talk about a lot of spiritual realms, especially kind of like in Eastern philosophy, there's a lot of discussion of, suffering is like the way that you find your deeper self, your higher self, sacrifice, suffering, pain, you know what I mean, and isolation and that kind of thing helps you really realize who you are at your best. And so I think for me, that's more consistent with like my struggle and how I made it to who I am. When I was young, I was like the conscious kid at like sixth grade. You know what I mean? My father was 40 when he had me, so like fitting in was like somewhat of a task. Although I never fully was an outcast, it didn't feel necessarily the greatest when you got other dudes that are getting girls, other dudes that got certain shoes and all of this, and I ain't necessarily have that. So things like that. Moving forward, when I got a little older in middle school, that was a big transition point for me, because I went from the city schools, 43 school, to the white schools. I was part of a program that, bused basically black kids, black and Latino for the most part, to the suburbs. And this is called the Urban Suburban Program, or at least that's what it's called in Rochester, which is, of course, an outgrowth of the Brown v. Board of Education thing from 1954. They started, interacting with, kind of you either the brown and black kids, from the inner cities, usually to suburbs and this kind of thing. So that's kind of where that program came from. But either way, around sixth grade, I transitioned, and that was a struggle because now it's racial. The consciousness, about culture is different. In the suburbs, the consciousness about culture is just not pronounced, or it's absent, or it's just non-melanated and barely exists. You're like a performance to them. You're exotic to them, and that was interesting. And I'm not the type of person that considers myself anybody's performance. You know what I mean? I'm not a circus for anybody. I'm not, late night with Johnny Carson with anybody until I say so. But when it's you and it's like 75 kids and that's like the damn near the ratio, that's kind of, it's kind of intense. And I think sometimes in life, things are, things are, only is difficult as your mind is able to perceive them as. So sometimes like there can be all types of issues around you, or perhaps all types of opportunities around you. But if your mind doesn't recognize it, then none of it's there. So just think of kind of like anxiety, of being a person. You're very aware of all the things that seem to be uncomfortable or awkward to you. And so like in sixth, seventh grade, I'm someone that was like super aware of like how people saw me, what people thought, racial differences, people, being insensitive. I'm very sensitive to that at a young age. And then the problem at a young age is you don't necessarily have the tools to like fight that off. So you're aware of the dangers, and then you're vulnerable. And I think that in those times, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, well, pretty much sixth grade through maybe about 10th, 11th, that was pretty difficult. And then moving forward, just to keep it moving forward, when I got into college, this weird thing because like I still had a very black consciousness because I've been studying up my heroes and studying the X's and the Garveys and the Martin Delaney's and Booker T. Washington, whomever, Du Bois. Uh, but the thing was, I still wasn't exactly living the black experience. I wasn't with black folks every day, and that wasn't really on me because I wasn't paying a mortgage enough to put myself into the city. I was, under my parents, and I was attending the school I was sent to. And so as time went on, eventually, I was still kind of just kind of accustomed to dealing with white folks, accustomed to being in an environment, but still having kind of a black center mentality. So it's like the practice of being around black people, and dating black women and interacting constantly with black women or young black men and all the scenarios that come with, that and the culture that comes with that, just at a moment to moment level. I didn't have all of it. I had some of it because I was in the city half of the time, but not all of the time. So, when you're looking to form relationships with a lot of brothers and sisters, it wasn't, it's harder, it's harder to relate because again, although like your heart and some of your philosophies are very black centered, still on a day-to-day basis, the way you carry yourself, the conversations that you for the most part engage in, maybe styles that you rock, um, artists that you listen to, and so on and so current events that you focus on. Those are things that usually connect people and bridge the gap between people initially. And I didn't really have that just because I just really wasn't, interacting with a lot of people like that, from the city and black folks and all of that. So when I got to college, it was like I had to slowly get my way back into all of that. And of course I did. But, in particular in my love life, it was like weird, so it left me kind of outside of who I was to some extent. So I had to kind of almost look like stand outside of myself and watch things go on, knowing that, my connection to the black community should be stronger. But I just had to like acclimate myself gradually to it, so, and I got more in the swing of that basically when I moved to Brooklyn, after law school. So it took a minute. So like my dating life, when I got to Brooklyn, when at that point, so my life as far as like being black centered almost was on pause, arguably like 8 years or something like that. Got to Brooklyn and it was back on again. You know what I mean? I felt very comfortable, um, and it was cool. And then now that I've been in Rochester, it's like full swing. It's, all good. But yeah, my struggle is a little more of a kind of this, finding myself in relation to a world of people that aren't necessarily concerned that much about that. They're more concerned with just familiarizing themselves with the external parts of themselves and then the external parts of other people and superficially kind of navigating toward each other. Whereas, my interest, of course, was in finding myself. And then that left me way outside of all of these people, and it's natural for a lot of people, or for each person to want to unite with someone else and bond with someone else. And I couldn't really do that like I wanted to for many years. So, that's a little more the nature of my struggle, and I guess the last thing I put out there is I've gotten accustomed to like accepting the fact that even though I'm pretty well adjusted, I'm still very different, and that's cool. I think in part because in every community there's like a handful of us, and we got each other if nothing else. So it's not as bitter of an experience as my 10th grade, where it's like two of us. We felt some type of way. So that's how I put it.
Well said, brother. And I feel you wanting to go into the school in the burbs because I went to Rondequoit and I already know how it is, how they kind of look at you to kind of be like maybe entertainment or they want to kind of fill you out. And it's kind of like you say, kind of like an experiment. And I had some different experiences that I can relate to similar to yours. And they kind of like had these little, I don't know, just these weird little things they would, since I'm the black guy, they want me to try it or they want me to do it and see how it is when I do something. It's just like I was always kind of under special scrutiny, so I kind of understand what you go through when you were telling me that story. And I could definitely kind of understand the challenge too, trying to navigate, through a system where it's like a school of, people that don't look like you, but you still got to constantly aware of who you are, what you represent. So I appreciate you making it through your struggle, and I do understand some of that. I don't because I'm not an attorney, but definitely got a unique story. So, what would you recommend for somebody that wants to become a lawyer? Like, what would you tell them to do, or how would you tell them to navigate based on what you learned in your experiences?
Well, it's a long journey. So first off, get your mentor on. Well, get your mentee on technically. But yeah, seek out a mentor. Let someone explain what the journey is like to you. Let them school and coach you. Foster growth and encourage you and all of that. It's great when you have a spirit that's strong enough to be a pioneer with, It's great when you can just kind of plow everything in your path and wherever you're headed in your life. But is that necessary? And I think a mentor is great because whatever your trajectory is, you're likely to get there faster, and probably, I don't know, smoother if you have a mentor. Let's just use a generalized metric. Let's just say in your life, if you were meant to make $110,000 a year or whatever, like on average or some basic like metric, then with a mentor, maybe you make like 175, because you've been given that extra push. And it's not all about money, but for the sake of my point and like measuring progress, I just wanted a quick example. But I think a mentor is important. That point aside, I think that you also need to know yourself. So, of course, on the strength of many teachings, within the realm of Black thinking, whether it be Malcolm X or whether it be some of the ideas that go with, ancient Kemet and knowing thyself, and all of that, it's important that you recognize your strengths, your capabilities, your purpose, why you're here, why you're in society. Who are you in relation to the next person? Are you a leader? Are you not? And there's different contexts. So sometimes you're a leader, sometimes you're a follower, or sometimes you're a student, sometimes you're a teacher. Who are you as it relates to all of these questions? They should always be asked and they should always be answered. You should be seeking out some clarity on those points. I can say that for me, I always want to speak up. I like defending people. I like to be educated. I like to be a student. I like to learn. I like different types of people and different types of information. I always seek it out. I don't always prefer to get this information through books. I do prefer to get it actually more so through people. But I know this is how I work. And to the extent that's true, um, being an attorney in an area of the law, in particular one that is in court a lot, it requires these things. I went to school for communications. I'm someone that I like to write and I like to talk. I like words. Just like Malcolm X like went through the whole dictionary. I did that for a period of time. I probably got to letter B and stopped, but I like to do that, or I like to do that back in the days, and I love words. So all of these different kind of characteristics and aspects of who I am matched up well with advocacy and kind of performance to some extent, and understanding different philosophies and different concepts and all of these things. So I think that when you think of what an attorney represents, especially in like a trial or a court or advocacy context, that my personality matches that pretty well. So I understand the role of an attorney. I also understand myself and what I have to offer. And I think with these understandings, I can kind of put them side by side and say, yeah, they match up pretty well. So, and I think a lot of times when I've thought about this a great deal, and that is like, I noticed that, there's a lot of folks that will go to law school, and some, it could be law school, it could be master's program, whatever. So a lot of people are like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if I even want to be a lawyer. I don't, you hear these things from time to time. And for me, I never had that issue. Not really. I mean, to a lighter extent, like which job do I want? But not, do I even want to be in law school? Do I even want to be a lawyer? It's not these broad like moments of hesitation, maybe more like narrow moments of hesitation, like, do I apply company A or company B? Not whether or not I go to, school for this and that kind of thing. Not whether I want to stay in this profession in general. And that's because I've given a lot of time to think about who I am, and kind of match it up with the situations that I'm in. And I think the same thing goes for everything else you do. You know, um, it could be your diet. It could be the way that you go about fitness. It could be the person that you date. I think if we do that type of analysis, about who we are and kind of what we have as a person. Just imagine it like it's like a transaction kind of with life in the world. Just imagine a normal transaction. You go into a store, they have different products. You got $30 and they got a product for $5, a product for 30, and a product for 50 and a product for 70. So clearly, product for 50 and 70 you can't buy because you have X amount of dollars in your $30 in your pocket. You can afford, I guess, the first two items, right? And if you think of it that simply, it seems simple enough. Really, life and how each person kind of inventories themselves in relation to the rest of the world, it should work that way as well. But I think part of the problem is, in this world that we live in, it's a world that just simply doesn't look as deeply inside and inward, and that's not taught because it's a concept that is, I guess, is a little more spiritual. I think, looking on the inside of who you are, figuring out that through signs and figuring that out through lessons and principles and this and that. Da, da, da. This society doesn't really condition us with that, teach us with that, it doesn't mold us in that direction. But I think to the extent that folks want to become something, you want to be a husband, you want to be a father, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be whatever, you have to inventory yourself first. So, it's not as simple as, do I have $5? Does the store have a product for less than that? But, on a basic sense, it is kind of that, are you a person that is patient enough to deal with a lot of clients each day? People calling you and ask you questions that you think they should understand, but in reality, they don't, and they are where they are. Do you have patience for that? Are you able to, explain things clearly to people time and time again? And these are this basic analysis, I think, is important in a critical life point that gets us very, very, very close to our highest sense of self-actualization for attorney or any other thing, even into romance as well.
Got you. I think, are you still there? I think I might have, okay. I lost you for a minute. But I definitely feel you on all that. So the key is definitely knowing yourself. That's really.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. You still hear me? We still good? We still good? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I think it went in and out for a second. It should be. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. But
you're okay, but you slowed down a little bit.
Was you gonna say something else, or you finished your segment on that? I don't know if you was.
Oh, nah.
Okay.
Nah. Yeah, nah. Yeah, if you got another question, I am willing to.
I ain't gonna hold you too much. I know you're a busy man, so I ain't gonna hold you too long. But I definitely feel what you're saying. So definitely for the people that want to become lawyers, you're saying definitely know yourself and definitely know what you get yourself into. So I think that's definitely the best way to start. And that's kind of why I went to school, but I didn't really go too long because I wasn't one of the people that just was going to go. So I think it's important to know yourself, know what you're doing, know what you're going for, especially when you get into the school game and get into the loans if you take that route or whatever. However you use your time, know what you're doing it for. So let's talk about you having your own practice because I know you got your own law office, right?
Yes, sir.
So what made you get your own law office? Because you could have easily just probably got under somebody else's umbrella, and I don't know how that works. Maybe less overhead, maybe, but I know you was like, you're gonna do your own thing. It's like you got your own office. So could you kind of explain why you took that approach? Because definitely entrepreneurial, and I definitely respect that. So why that route? Because you didn't have to take that route.
Yeah, good question. Well, you know what? I always think of it as it was like somewhat out of necessity. And so in 2000, let's just go back to 2010, and I'll just keep it moving, and we'll break it piece by piece. So I took the bar exam in May, right when I finished law school, May 2009. Didn't pass. We always got to keep it real with these moments. All right, I didn't pass the first time. And I think at that time, I didn't have, a very, very, very critical or honest sense of how to test. So moving forward, and that's when I was living in New York City. Things were going good, whatever. I came back to Rochester to take the bar again. Started to look at how I was testing and why I was getting certain things wrong, whatever, whatever. And I corrected that. I was very honest about my weaknesses and that kind of thing. And I focused on that past the bar. So moving forward, from there, it's difficult to get in the legal field. Actually, it's not really a lot of jobs like that. And mind you, if we're talking like criminal, it is more jobs, but I didn't want to do that. I was more interested in family law, like I do now. But you got to kind of work your way in. It's almost like in law, like there is no like first, second, or third grade. Like you just gotta teach yourself for the first few years, unless like you got some like advantage that'll weave you in at those earlier levels of your career. So if you're not with the criminal, you might struggle to get a job. That's the point. Anyways, so I went to Frontier. I worked as a contractor for contracts. I did that. Moving past that, I was laid off. That was just a natural ending. That went pretty good though. And then I moved to Thomson Reuters. That job wasn't the best look. And some of the point of this is that I'm developing what's the environment that I came into, an environment that I recognized didn't necessarily want me. This is the point of all of this. But just to take a step back, with Thomson Reuters, this is like a research job, or I'm sorry, it's more like an editing job. And it's a job I saw promoted. I applied, I got it. And when I look back on it, I realized they just didn't. No one wanted the job. That was a job a lot of people didn't like, and that company was looking for whoever, and it just wasn't like that great a position because I tested better than other people. And for that area, that type of job, I'm not like super efficient. I don't have like a good background in it. But because I think they had a weakness in this community of people that would take that job, I was able to get that. I didn't do that great at that job. I got fired. I had to like, because of like the way things were, I had to get tested for ADHD, and it kind of like it gave me like a little more time for stuff because of that. And that's when I began to think more about how I could be more, aside from any drugs I would take. Because I remember I tried to take some of the drugs for ADHD, and it would just make me feel like high. It was weird. But I never really took them like that because I knew that was foolishness. So I never really took it. And then fast forward again, after I got fired from that job, it was, I was in a weird space because it's like, am I going to get hired again? So, I applied to a foreclosure job. And when I applied to that job, I kind of knew in the back of my mind, like, this is the devil's work. I knew in the back of my mind, like, I don't know about this. It's kind of questionable. But at the same time, I'm trying to find work. Because again, in this field, and this is consistent with what I'm trying to describe, is the environment for attorneys. It's not going to embrace everybody. Like if you wanted to do tax law, who does tax law? How many tax law firms are there? And to the extent that there are, they're probably not. I mean, are they hiring a lot of black folks or what? I mean, what I'm saying, like you want to do copyright law. It's not a lot out there. You know what I mean? Criminal, cool. That makes sense. It's a lot of jobs for criminal. It's not a lot of jobs for everything. So, coming back around to the point, foreclosure work was like paying me good. They paid me like 65. I was like, okay, that's what's up. Because at this point I could, probably pay for like a nice car and this, and the third. But I went to that job. That job was weird, man. I was there 3 months, and I got into like, basically a little weird situation. Like they had something called third party complaints. And so someone didn't like something I was doing, which honestly was probably like just talking probably too much, but not being negative because I'm that type of person I am. And that person basically um, filed like a third party complaint, and it wasn't aimed at them. It may have been like me and someone else talking, and we're just talking casually, just having a good time. You know what I mean? Again, nothing negative, because that's not how I operate. And that person just felt uncomfortable, and so that person filed a third party complaint, I think twice. And so I ended up getting fired because of this type of situation. I didn't know anything like that. I didn't know like someone could complain and not be aimed at them, and I could get fired for that. It's like a weird concept to me. Like things like this for me strike me as like this is an example of like either a mixture of white supremacy or like when you're in like the matrix of capitalism and it's spitting you out. That's the way I interpreted that. Like that's stupid to me. And I had never heard of that anywhere anyway. But at any rate, so the way I looked at it was, I was working for a foreclosure firm, and it was like shame on me. Why am I doing that? While at the same time, of course, we have to learn from experience, and we have to go through it, in order to get to where we're going sometimes. So it's not like we're going to be righteous our whole lives. Obviously, the stories of many of our heroes prove that. Either which way, got fired from it. And at that point, I was like real low, like, damn, like I've been fired 2 times in a row in 2 years. Like, how am I supposed to like live at this point? Like something's not going the way it needs to. Um, so what I did was I was on a bus one day, and my cousin, who had just beat a gun charge of all people, big up to everybody in Thurston World again. My cousin had just beat a gun charge, but he was like a real interesting character. He's like smart dude. He was like, he basically said, yeah, you should check out Van White. You should talk to him. And I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. Why not? You know what I mean? Because I'm someone that I'll network. I'll talk to people, I'll reach out, call people. I won't really hesitate. Why not? I got the mentality like the worst they or he or them or whatever could do is say no. So I reached out. Sure enough, like Van White took me on, did like some research for him, and went to court with him and shadowed him and did a motion or two. And after interacting with him for maybe about 6 months, I went ahead and started my own practice. And I was doing unemployment insurance then, and I was doing like a little bit of family law, little bit, not much, maybe like a case like every 2 months, something real light. But that's what I was doing, and I started volunteering my time. And that was a way for me to like get experience and give back. And I did like 300 pro bono hours at that point, which is pretty much like a record or on that level of like, there's some heavyweight hours. And then at that point in 2013, around June, July, August, well, June to kind of the end of the year, that's when my life changed. And I can say that legit, that's the case. Because at that point in time, like it was like I figured out like the way to properly kind of like reach who I was and what I'm about, and kind of like my purpose through my profession, do what made me happy, make money, hold down the hood, be in touch with the hood, Black folks, and so on and so forth, kind of all at once. And Van White was really kind of the inspiration for that in many ways. It's kind of no coincidence that the brother that owns his own practice, I went to him, and then a few months later, I have my own practice. I can't act like there's no connection. You know what I'm saying? That would be kind of whack on my part. So so I opened up practice, and then I was doing that for a few months, getting some experience, whatever. Then a law firm, I was still applying for jobs for firms and trying to like go to a firm because I wasn't fully sure that I was going to do my own business at that point. That wasn't like clear yet. It was just like, let me do this, I can make some money. I think unemployment insurance had the SEAP program, SEAP. I think it was like self-employment assistance program. And they were basically letting me collect unemployment insurance while I built a business. And so that was an opportunity I took advantage of. So around this time when I did that, it was like I was kind of like making 40 a year. So it was like, all right, I'm doing pretty good. You know, I'm all right right now. So I kept doing that. Then I applied to a law firm. They hit me back and they're like, yeah, well, I don't think we can take you, but you're a good candidate. And then I was like, yeah, well, try to consider me if you can. But they're like, nah, we're not fully interested. Lo and behold, I was getting like a community bike, like because I used to like do different things to just stay out in the public and stay active. And I was getting like a free community bike over on Hudson, I think. Our community bikes, big up to them because they do a lot of good community stuff. And one of the partners from the law firm called me and he said, yeah, you know what? We will offer you a position. We like you. You interview well. You seem like a good fit. And I knew at that point, this is like my life is changing kind of moments. At that point, I was like, yes, I've arrived. And I didn't like know fully that I had, but I knew that was kind of special. You know what I'm saying? I knew that was a good opportunity. I knew that like the fact that I started a business and it led to that, that was proof of something. It was proof that I kind of won a victory, and so, at that point I went into a law firm and that basically like put me on steroids. That was definitely a really good opportunity. A lot of white males that ran the place, but nice guys though. Guys that like I still see and I still say hi. Respectable guys, still refer clients there. They all seem like decent people to me. I mean, I was around them most of the time. So, and I'm around people I don't like. So I thought that was a good place and it's good people there. So my skill set got a lot stronger because of going there. I got more confident. Got a little bit of court experience, and my writing became really good. After I left there, because they had me there about a year, started my own practice. And once I got into the practice, I was thinking about applying to other places. I did a little bit, and then after uh, about 6 or 7 months, I was like, you know what, I'm good. I'm good. And because I started making money, I got into an office, which where I'm at now in 2015. And once I got into the office, it's like I was on fire and I never got put out, So, from that point, things kind of jumped off. But in terms of my practice, in terms of starting it, in terms of, like building it up, that's kind of the story behind it. And the signs that I got and that were kind of in opposition to my purpose, and how I began to think about that, understand that, and then it guided myself, in a direction that seemed to make sense. And there's a lot of interesting pieces of the story. Like my cousin, generally unlikely. Uh, what's the way to put it? Unlikely inspiring figure in the story. But arguably, he's one of the most important people in the story. You know what I'm saying? The brother just beat a gun charge. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like arguably the least likely person to put you on to like where your fate lies. But sure enough, he was basically right, and I guess it's important for us to recognize the higher power and the creator and God, and when God is speaking through certain things, to try to be in tune to that. Because otherwise I could have just dismissed him like, man, what are you talking about, man? You know what I'm saying? You don't even have your own life together. I could have gave those responses. But it's not really about that. When you're a little more in tune to who you are, I think we hear the messages and see the signs much better. And it also, with the opportunity I got from Van White, I kept taking initiative. And I took opportunities as they came up, and it was almost like, even though I came to a low point, I still was never really, um, I was never really asked out. I always was kind of shielded just as long as I was paying attention. And as I was on the path, I was watching where I was supposed to go and looking for kind of clues to the direction that I was supposed to go. So, up to this point, like I pay a lot of attention to that, So that's how practice got started, and ever since then I've been doing good. And at this point, it's just a matter of this phase in my practice is more about how do I bring on people I can that can intern, that can give I can give back to the community through them. Hiring people, putting money in folks' pockets, and giving the community some guidance, like giving a lot of information, but doing it in a way that's sustainable, doing it in a way that is unique to me, and constantly trying to just be consistent and step it up to some extent as well. So I've had almost 10 interns over the past 2 years. I've done pretty good with that. I've basically two right now. I've one employee who's part time. Nothing crazy. I don't pretend, y'all. I don't pretend. That's not what I do. I just try to keep it real. So it's not. I don't got no 50-hour week employees, but I do have a part time employee, and I am helping the sister build her business through my business, and that is she's a process server, and she serves my paperwork. When I go to court, I have to serve it. So I've kind of encouraged her to like make money off of me, because I was gonna give the money to someone else. Why do that when I can train someone to do it? So that's one of the things I've been working on in the past 6 months. So I paid for a DBA. She's really, really like adamant about it, and it feels good. It feels good, and she's like really with it. She's been with me. I actually met her at court when she was in court, like waiting for a case, and she was just like, can I come in and be an intern? I was like, hey, why not? And that's how things got started with that. Some of the unlikely moments sometimes are the greatest opportunities. You just got to kind of listen for that message properly.
A lot of gems in that story, man. You got a real interesting story how you just really got started. And I really think that that's the big key, is that you got your own practice, like you said, because you can bring interns in, and you don't got to worry about getting fired because you own your own business. So I really think that's really cool. Got to respect that, and I think it's cool that you said your cousin got you in that position. And like you said, you could have overlooked that. You could have kind of like judged his situation, and you didn't. So that's what kind of God blessed you. He allowed you to then get put in the position of somebody else. So really, think this is a good story, man. So before we get ready to wrap it up, I wanted you to talk about some of the other stuff you do, because you're a business owner, you're an attorney, but you got a radio show. You also got these events where you bring Black vendors together to sell products to other Black people. Like, you do a lot of stuff. I just want to make sure that people know all the stuff that you're doing, so that they can really support that, because you do a lot of good stuff for the community. So you tell the people some of that stuff that you do, get a little more information about it, how they can support it.
Yeah. So consistent with my belief that like I've been given a lot, and this comes from the Bible, that to whom to whom much is given, much is required. Sorry for that glitch, but yeah, to whom much is given, much is required. I believe that 100% or 120%, if you want to go that route. So I feel like I can never give back enough. I feel like I can never do too much. And with that being said, I load on all the things that seem interesting to me. So I have a lot of things. Some of it's a little bit dated though, just because, certain reasons things didn't fully pan out. And I guess that's just kind of seasons changing, like, so I have bobcritic.wordpress.com. That's pretty much at this point kind of dated now, but it's still, a website that's active. And I will go to different Black-owned businesses and talk about them. And I would explain that it wasn't really designed to criticize them as much as it was to share information. And I just have critics so people kind of understand the nature of me talking about the business. So, bobcritic.wordpress, you could check that out. That has a lot of different places. I think Philly and Harlem and DC, Rochester, no doubt, Syracuse, Buffalo, and It might even be something from Canada. I tend to forget. But it's a handful of places, maybe like 50 places on that. Then also ujamarrising.com, or just simply the show. It's Ujamaa Rising. Ujamaa is the fourth principle of Kwanzaa. And Ujamaa does stand for cooperative economics in Swahili. And, for me, Kwanzaa is very important. Separately, I am on a Kwanzaa coalition here in Rochester, and this is my 5th year. I'm more or less in kind of like a chairman position. I tend to kind of like, we got a meeting tomorrow, y'all. Just in case you were wondering and you were asking yourself, Craig, when's the next meeting? I might want to come. I might just drop through. I actually am at the coffee shop right next door to where y'all meet. Then yes, there's a meeting tomorrow, my brothers and sisters, and whomever else is listening. Tomorrow at 6:45. 728 University Avenue, Rochester, New York, the Baobab Cultural Center. But yeah, the Ujamaa Rising is a show that, I came up with, to just highlight businesses in our community. Folks just talk about their business and, why they got into it and their story, and all of that. And there's a brother named Rajesh Barnabas. He was like the videographer. And then my sister, Jessica, what's Jessica's last name? Well, for now, sorry, Jessica. I don't know. It's been a long day. Just let's blame it on that. But yeah, Jessica, she's on the show as well. I mean, you can get her name from the credits. And on Ujamaa Rising, which, she does a great job, and Rajesh does a great job in her respective parts. But yeah, we highlight businesses. So that was dope. And there's probably 10 episodes or so on the website. And it's very professional. Unfortunately, we just weren't able to fully push it. Like, we needed a deeper team to take it to the next level. So some things just don't always work out. But it was a good run. Separately, I have the Ujamaa Marketplace, which I kind of started that like early 2015. I'm sorry, to early 2018. And those are every first Saturday. And now every third Saturday in our community. So we can make money off of sharing similar space, networking, and getting each other business for a low cost. I don't like to charge people much. Vendor fees 20. Not really trying to make money. I want other people to make money. I want other people to get exposed. I want other people to come up. And that's the aim, and this is what we consider on that basic level cooperative economics. As a brief point, I do recognize, the ills and the evils of capitalism, because it really is a system of exploitation. Part of how we got here as people, and part of how we've been remained in the chains of slavery is through capitalism in many ways. Without going to any hardcore depth on that, I do believe that to the extent that we are practicing the principles that come with Kwanzaa, to the extent that we are recognizing our African origins and heritage and our ancestors and that kind of thing, and we bring this package to the way we practice cooperative economics, the way we deal with each other, and the way we interact with commerce. See, I think that's a different system than just simply Black capitalism. You know what I mean? So there's that point. But the marketplace is an event, is a great event that I have. And then I have 2 other shows, Love and Situationships, which is on WXIR 100.9 FM. And that's on Mondays at 7 p.m. The point is to try to empower Black relationships kind of through concepts, information, but also have a good time with the show and get it lit. So it's a mixture of both. In our generation, we have a lot of Black intellectuals that are real cool people, could hold it down on the block, could hold it down in the party, but then also could hold it down in the court, in the courtroom, the boardroom. And these kind of superhuman people, is the way, is kind of the way I like to think of the show and how it should be. We don't have to just be super opinionated, because most of our conversations that are progressive, make real strong moves with concepts and not just opinions. So that's kind of the thinking that goes into the show Love and Situationships, which again is on Mondays, 7 p.m., WXIR 100.9. And the last one is the Esquire Hour, which is basically an attorney show. It's me and my colleague, John Regan, and we host that every Saturday at 12 p.m. Also on WXIR 100.9, 100.9 FM. Excuse me, I'm definitely getting tired, but yeah, that's the final show, and the legal show, of course, is designed to educate our community because there's too many laws that we're not accustomed to. We're not aware. We're not familiar. We don't know them in depth. We know what the streets tell us and what the community tells us, and that's not enough in some cases, especially when some of these situations are life or death, and you're about to lose your freedom, you're about to lose your house, you're about to lose some money. You need to be fully in tune to what the law really says. So our show is an effort to at least begin that discussion and refine and clarify folks' understandings. So for me, it's all about giving back in the ways I know how to. And I'm growing and figure out other ways that I can give back. But these, are my efforts, and this is kind of my closet, of community initiatives and stuff like that.
Yeah, man, you do a lot of stuff, man. Definitely respect everything that you do. I've been to some of your JAMA events. They always go down, participate in them. Always grateful to be appreciative. Definitely got to support more, so I'm not going to act like I'm always there, but I do my best to support, but I do appreciate your efforts. You always have people win there. It's always people win there. So putting people in a position to make money, to grow their business, to be successful. So there's so much commendable stuff you do. So I definitely respect what you do. So before I let you go, how can people find more about you? Like, do you want to get them a website, a number? I'm gonna put this on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So how can people find you? And also, do you work with people outside of Rochester? Because people outside of Rochester may see this, well, they will see this. So do you work with people outside of Rochester? That's let me get that in closing before I let you go, brother.
Yep, sounds good. So my website for my law practice is CraigCarsonLaw.com. So that of course is CRAIG Carson CARSON law.com. Big up to the brother Timus. It's TB Creations. He did the website. Again, Black owned support. Real professional, real dope brother that does some work for the city and all of that. Good dude. Very clean visuals that come along with his work. And as to Instagram, just the law officer Craig Carson on Instagram. Check me out on there. I'm on Facebook, just law officer Craig Carson on Facebook. Big up the page, like the page, check the page. Got information on there and things of that nature. There's new landlord-tenant laws, and I have that posted on my website for New Yorkers, that is, because of course I'm only barred in New York State. And then in terms of your last question, Derek, about working with other people, I'm always down for that. While at the same time, I think that's probably one of the areas where I could grow more. Because the community is really the diaspora and spreads as far as our imagination can go. While at the same time, we have to kind of get our footing ready, and we have to kind of prime ourselves because we don't want to spread ourselves too thin, so we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where, the work we have in our own community at home, we're not doing that up to a certain level of quality before we move forward into any other communities outside of ours. But yeah, I'm always open to build with anybody that is principled, anybody that's Black centered, anybody that is an ally to our community, anybody that is down for the struggle, down for change and upliftment and all of that. To the extent that I was in Flint a few times, because I'm an activist too, which I guess I kind of left that out. But I'm an active, more or less a BLM activist. We're in Flint, and that was kind of the beginning of something that was going to be kind of someone from out of town and us collaborating with them. But sadly, we couldn't carry on that because it was kind of difficult long distance. But yeah, I'm always open to that because people like mine's got to stick together, and we got to fight on a regular basis, so we can kind of move our agenda forward, and empower our people, and always like tighten and strengthen that fabric, that is, African Center People's Movement.
All right, brother. So anything you want to lead the audience with before I let you go? Any closing statements or anything?
Not just big up to all the good people out there. I appreciate those that gave me their ear. I had the opportunity to share my experience with. Big up to you for providing this platform. This is cool. I appreciate it. Brother looked out, so I definitely gotta big up the kid Derek Alford real quick. Gotta big up the Thurston Road real quick in the 1904 over there, Rochester, New York. Gotta do that. But yeah, one love to everybody, and just the main thing is that let's all recognize our purpose. Let's all recognize, where we are kind of as African people. In the struggle, let's all recognize the principles that come with our people and kind of the important ancestors and the stories that come with our past, and kind of that Sankofa way of seeing things. And let's take all of those things and move forward together.
Well said, brother. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for all your time. So I'm gonna let you go. So peace and love, everybody. Hope y'all got a lot of value out of this video. Get my man Craig up. He knows his stuff. I use him personally. I vouch for him personally, and I got a lot of respect for him. So definitely check him out. So peace and love, y'all. We out. Y'all, peace.
Peace.